In the name of God, I am Kamand Kashi, and I am here with the 13th part of the International Transportation Training Series. In Part 13, we will review other common and widely used maritime transportation terms together. Please stay with me. The first term we want to get familiar with in this section is the term feeder vessel. A feeder vessel refers to small ships specifically designed for carrying containers, which are smaller than other ships and operate on shorter routes. One of the advantages of transporting containers with these ships is their cost effectiveness and, in fact, their quick loading and unloading. These ships are widely used for transporting goods to or from intermediary ports, such as Jebel Ali Port. And in our country, especially after the sanctions, the use of these ships has become much more common because many of the world's major shipping companies no longer send their large ships to our ports. Therefore, some of the lines that operate smaller ships or feeder vessels transport containers with these ships to intermediary ports like Jebel Ali, and from there, the containers are shipped to other destinations on larger vessels. The next term is mother vessel. Mother vessels are very large container ships that often have extremely high capacities, up to several 100,000 TEU for transporting containers. They regularly operate on designated routes and specific paths. These ships usually transport goods from intermediate ports to main ports, like the example I gave you in the previous slide. For instance, from Jebel Ali Port to European ports, Canadian ports, and the main ports of important countries. They typically have specific scheduled arrival and departure days, and they operate on a regular timetable. The world's major and leading shipping lines usually have a large number of mother vessels. NVOCC, or Non-Vessel Operating Common Carrier, is another term that we want to get familiar with here. NVOCCs are companies that handle sea freight, they are carriers, but the difference is that these carriers do not own ships themselves. Instead, by having containers, they purchase or reserve space or slots on the ships of shipping companies or liners, and then rent out that space along with the containers to cargo owners or forwarders. In this way, they carry out transportation, and nowadays their numbers have really increased. We see that the number of NVOCCs that have actually obtained the agency of a liner and are operating in this way has become very large. The next term we want to get familiar with in this section is the term surcharge. Surcharge refers to additional costs in transportation, and we mostly hear this term in sea freight. Costs that lead to an increase in freight rates, such as rising fuel prices or, in fact, currency fluctuations and similar factors. Often, when you get a freight rate from a shipping line or an NVOCC, later they might tell you that this rate includes BAF, CAF, or LSS has been applied to it. These types of items are commonly referred to as surcharges or additional costs. As you can see in the image, BF stands for Bunker Adjustment Factor, while CAF is short for Currency Adjustment Factor. We also have war risk, which is often applied when there is a risk of war at a port. If a ship needs to call at such a port, this particular surcharge will apply to the containers that are being loaded onto that ship. LSS, which stands for Low Sulfur Surcharge, has been introduced in recent years. It refers to the fuel used by ships that contains less sulfur, which helps to protect the environment and reduces pollution. Many shipping lines that use this low sulfur fuel charge their customers an LSS or low sulfur surcharge, and they have added this surcharge to their overall costs and pricing structures. These surcharges are important to be aware of, as they can have a significant impact on the total cost of shipping goods by sea. The next term we want to get familiar with in this section is the term shipping cutoff time or deadline. The owner of the goods or their legal representative usually has up to 48 hours before the ship arrives at the loading port to deliver the export documents to the shipping line's representative. This means that in practice, when you book a shipment or reserve a container, the shipping line will inform you, typically via email and official correspondence, about the specific cutoff time. This cutoff time is essentially the very last opportunity you have to deliver all the required export documents to the shipping line's representative, which is usually up to 48 hours before the ship arrives at the loading port. This particular time is called the cutoff time or the deadline for document submission. Typically, shipping lines notify you of this important time by sending a vessel schedule or a series of dates that clearly indicate the ship's expected arrival and departure dates. They will tell you that you must deliver the documents by this specified date, otherwise, the ship's list will be closed and your cargo will unfortunately miss this vessel. What is a vessel schedule and the ship's movement plan? A vessel schedule refers to the timetable for the movement of ships belonging to a particular shipping line, which is actually organized on a weekly basis or every few days, and it repeats regularly. It shows the arrival and departure of a ship to or from various ports. Shipping lines usually send this information to cargo owners, and it includes the approximate times of the ship's arrivals and departures. This can help cargo owners plan appropriately. Although the times mentioned in the schedule are all estimates, it still serves as a useful reference for cargo owners to plan accordingly and ensure their goods reach the shipping line at the scheduled time. The term ETA, which you see in the schedule, actually stands for the estimated time of arrival of the ship, and ETD, which you also see, refers to the estimated time of departure, meaning the approximate time the ship will leave. These schedules are usually sent by shipping lines to their customers, business partners, and other relevant stakeholders. What is a dated BL or dated bill of lading? Usually after the ship leaves the port, or in fact after its departure is completed and it sets sail, the shipping company sends a copy of the dated bill of lading, known as the dated BL, to the customer. This document includes the name of the ship, the voyage number, and the date of the ship's departure. This bill of lading, or this copy that is sent, is called the dated BL or dated bill of lading. The purpose of sending this bill of lading is simply to inform the customer that the ship has departed and the goods have left the port of origin. If the customer wants, they can also send this copy to their own buyer to inform them that, according to this date, the goods left this port on this ship. The next terms we want to talk about are Telex Release and Express Release, and what differences they have because many people mix them up, make mistakes, or think they are the same, whereas in reality, they are not the same and are completely different from each other. We will explain them fully in the following slides. After the ship departs and the dated bill is sent to the customer by the shipping line, the freight invoice is also sent to the customer, and the customer must proceed to settle the account with the shipping line. After the customer settles their account, they can request one of the following options: either ask the shipping line for the original bill of lading or request a telex release. The original bill of lading is quite self-explanatory. It includes 3 original copies, 3 photocopies, and possibly 1 certified true copy, which is called a full set of the bill of lading. The customer requests this, receives their documents, and provides a receipt confirming they have received the original documents. But if they want a telex release, it might be because, for certain reasons, the seller does not want to receive the original documents and send them to the buyer. At this point, they go in person and submit the full set of documents at the origin. The shipping line itself directly handles this process and specifically asks its agent at the origin to instruct its agent at the destination to release the goods to the consignee at the destination without requiring the presentation of the original bill of lading document. This message or notification that is sent by the shipping line's agent at the origin to the shipping line's agent at the destination, instructing them to release the cargo to the consignee without presenting the original bill of lading, is called a telex release. Nowadays, this is usually done in the form of an email. Or some shipping lines have an attachment, they send that attachment, and that's also called a telex release. The reasons why the seller might request this and not send the original bill of lading will be explained in the next slide. An important point that needs to be addressed here is that the release of the bill of lading must definitely take place at the origin at the shipping line's office. That is, the person doesn't go to pick it up elsewhere. They go to the shipping line, endorse the bill of lading there, and essentially declare that they have requested a release and have not received the original bill of lading. One of the reasons the seller might request a telex release is this very reason. One of the reasons is the short transit time. In other words, the route is actually very short. The goods quickly arrive at the destination. So by the time the seller wants to receive the documents and send them to the buyer by post, the goods have already arrived at the destination and are left waiting there. As a result, some of the demurrage charges we talked about earlier may accrue. Therefore, they decide instead of mailing the bill of lading and having the recipient wait to receive it and be delayed, to release the goods at the destination via Telex Release, for example from Bandar Abbas to Jebel Ali, where the ship is actually on the water for only 8 to 12 hours, the goods arrive very quickly. Usually, in 99% of cases, Telex Release is used for shipments to Jebel Ali. The second case is when the seller's documents are not ready while the ship is about to arrive at the destination port. The ship has arrived at the destination, but some of the documents that the seller is supposed to send to the buyer are still not ready. The documents that need to be sent to the buyer are not yet prepared. In this situation, Telex Release is used, which basically allows the goods to be released at the destination so that the seller can send the documents later. This way, the recipient doesn't have to wait for the documents from the seller and can pick up the container to avoid demurrage, and the documents can be sent afterward. The third case is when the buyer does not request the original bill of lading. Many times the buyer himself says, "I don't need the original bill of lading at all, Telex Release is enough for me." In these cases as well, requesting a Telex release is permissible. What is express release and how is it different from Telex release? When, from the very beginning, a seaway bill is used instead of a bill of lading for sea transport, that is, instead of a marine bill of lading or master bill of lading, a seaway bill (SWB) is issued. In fact, the goods are deliverable to the consignee upon arrival, and there is no longer any need for a bill of lading or any instruction from the seller. This seaway bill is usually used when there is complete trust between the buyer and the seller, and the buyer says, "I know the seller," and the seller says, "I know the buyer will pay me on time." So from the outset, a seaway bill is issued, and the buyer can release their goods with the seaway bill. This quick release method is called express release. The last term we want to get familiar with is the term switch bill or switch bill of lading. A switch bill is used when the seller wants to hide certain information from the buyer, for example, when they don't want the buyer to know the original exporting country, or when they want to export the goods through a series of intermediary ports or countries. In the past, switch bills were usually used when they wanted to change the consignee or do similar things. But today, due to sanctions, we see that the main use of the switch bill is to change the port of loading, that is, the original loading port. For example, a shipment is being loaded from Bandar Abbas to India, but for certain reasons they don't want the customer in India to know that the goods are coming from Bandar Abbas. So, after the ship departs, they change the port of loading to Jebel Ali. This type of bill of lading is called a switch bill. It is very important that when a switch bill of lading is used, if the original bill of lading has been received, it must be returned to the shipping line by the owner of the goods. They must return it and then receive their switch bill of lading with the new information, for example with the new port of loading, from the shipping line.